Hey everybody, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and I know that some of you are looking at the calendar here, and you're like, dang, this month we are going to have been doing this together for 2 years. And yep, that is what we're coming up on, 2-year anniversary of you and I every single weekday morning talking about the book of Matthew. And we've made a ton of progress. We're in chapter 21 out of 28, so hey, we're getting there. Awesome, high five. But also some of you were like, my friend told me to listen to this podcast that said that they liked it or whatever, and they keep badgering me about it, and so I finally am going to listen to one, and I just picked this one, and this is the one I'm listening to. What the heck do we actually do here? And that, my new friend, is a very reasonable question. What we do here is very slowly chip away at the entirety of the first book of the New Testament, of the Bible. It's the book of Matthew. It was written by a Jewish tax collector who was a reject in his society and responded to the invitation of Jesus to follow him and see where this whole thing goes. Long story short, Matthew realizes this is the truest, realest thing ever, and that it answers all the questions that all the other stuff he was doing didn't answer. And so even though he doesn't know everything about it or get it all from the get-go, he decides to follow Jesus, and he gives us this account that happens after all of the events of Jesus' life unfold. After the fact, he writes down all this stuff, and he does it with an editorial eye to write to his fellow countrymen, his fellow ethnic brothers and sisters, the Jewish people. He's probably writing to a mixed audience of Jewish people who are like, I don't know if Jesus was the long promised, foretold, prophesied Messiah, or maybe the most interesting religious startup we've had in a long time. I'm still sizing it up. I already have a God, and I've already got like a thing that I believe about the Bible and the scriptures we have and stuff. I'm not sure I'm really looking for new things, but he was really compelling, and a lot of people I know and like seem to be really into him, so I'm interested. It looks like Matthew is trying to explain Jesus in the context of the grand history of Jewishness to that skeptical but open crowd, as well as another portion of his audience who would have been Jewish Christians, people who were in, and of course they still got a lot of questions too. What does this all mean? How does it all fit together? But they're getting the picture that Jesus is building this new family of faith, that there is this bigger, grander thing that is yet to be done, and that it is being accomplished by the life and teachings of Jesus, by the death of Jesus, by the resurrection of Jesus, and by whatever is happening next. At the time that Matthew was writing this, there would have been rumors swirling all over the place about God's Spirit being at work in miraculous ways and stuff that would be ridiculous sounding to an outsider, that was making a lot of sense to people who were in. So that is the context in which we encounter the book of Matthew. Now, if you are brand new to this thing, this is a great episode to jump in. I mean, any of these are a great place to jump in. You'll pick it up, you'll figure out where we're at, and maybe you'll want to go back to the beginning and just binge right up to where we are real time. Maybe you'll just want to pick it up from here. I mean, whatever's cool. It's the internet. But I'm saying all of this, I guess, first of all, to say, again, welcome, but also to say the big context is pretty important for the part of Matthew that we're in right now. The big ethnic, national, religious establishment context super matters here, because we're still wrestling with this question of what is God going to do next? Well, Judaism anticipated the arrival of a promised king who would be the fulfillment of promises that they believe God made to Abraham and Moses and King David and lots of other prophets who got very mistreated along the way by their own people, by the way. But the belief was there's this Messiah, there's this king who's going to come and fulfill, complete all the stuff that had been hinted at in ancient history with the Jewish people, all the stuff that had been pointed to with the grand sweeping miracles of creation in the Old Testament that are recorded in the Jewish scriptures, what Christians call the Old Testament. But there was some disagreement about what this Messiah character was going to look like. And while people were waiting around for this Messiah character to show up, you've got religious stewards who keep safe and keep warm the throne of the actual promised king until the actual promised king returns. And if you're catching the Tolkien overtones here, the Middle-earth Lord of the Rings overtones, that's not me, that's J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, I don't think that the Return of the King is necessarily a neat, tidy allegory, but this notion of a steward occupying the seat and managing the affairs of a temporarily or long-term temporarily empty throne is a historical motif, a literary motif, a biblical motif. And so as people who Matthew are writing to are thinking about the Messiah, you've got people who are saying, all right, well, we have a religion that's kind of grown out of what was written down in the Old Testament, and you need caretakers of that, and they need funding, and the rules are going to be pretty strict, because in the Old Testament, it looks like sometimes we got a little bit lax, and then God judged us, and we got punished by outside nations and territories. We dealt with moral collapse. And so we're going to take this thing to the next level. And we need these stewards, these religious leaders referred to in the Bible as the Pharisees, Sadducees, elders, chief priests, teachers of the law. These people are all part of this religious establishment that really does run the show extra-governmentally in the first century in Judea and Galilee at the time of Jesus that we're learning about here in Matthew chapter 21, or really all of Matthew in general. And so some folks who Matthew's writing to, they're like, I don't think we have a Messiah coming anytime soon, but we've got a really good system that is something that could be sustainable for as long as it needs to be sustainable. And indeed, many, I don't know, I think it's safe to say most modern Jews 2,000 years after the fact would say that they're still in the same place they were 2,000 years ago, that the Messiah has not come. Maybe Jesus was one of the most compelling pretenders, according to them. Maybe a couple of military leaders who came in the successive centuries. Might also have been other upstarts who were a little bit interesting or compelling, but no. The Messiah has not come. The system, the law, is something that is religiously maintained, and that is still keeping the seat warm until one day the king returns. And there's still disagreement about what that king looks like. But back to the first century, you got people who are just fine with the religious status quo, and the people who are most fine with that are, of course, the religious leaders who are in charge, because it's lucrative. It's a good deal. There's power and comfort and ease that comes with it. Another view is that the Messiah who's going to show up in the first century AD is going to be a military leader who's going to throw off the Roman oppressors, establish a new government, a new kingdom. God will punish people. There'll be kind of a theocracy that'll be established, sort of like the Old Testament, but even better. And vindication is going to happen, and all of the old ancient enemies of the Jewish people will be corrected and defeated and brought to heel before them. And then you've got this remnant that is presented as being a minority in the New Testament, this remnant of people who are like, nah, the Messiah is supposed to be somebody who is the long-promised king, and they will come and complete the promises of God and establish a kingdom on which this new king will reign forever, and all of the nations will be blessed through this, and all of history will be completed through this, and it will transcend wars and politics and all of the little things. The 24-hour news cycle is going to be bigger than all of that, and that minority of people were looking for somebody just like Jesus of Nazareth. And if we understand these differing expectations, then I think we're set up to understand the next few chapters of Matthew that we're looking at here, including 21 that we've been looking at for the last couple of weeks. Because what we're running into here is the ultimate clash, the showdown between this compelling messianic figure, Jesus of Nazareth, and the religious leadership, the establishment. And Jesus is showing up and saying, you guys have been weighed and found wanting. You were supposed to tend the vineyard, but you didn't. You were supposed to open the doors so that people could have access to God, but instead of unlocking the doors and opening them, you threw away the keys. You were supposed to model some sort of kingdom values or be moral exemplars, but instead you painted the outside of your metaphorical tombs, but the inside is full of death and rot. It's not what you hold it out as being. It's fraudulent and it's false, and it operates under the same terms of everything else in the world, which is money, power, greed, and as we're going to see in a few chapters, violence. So the religious leaders, by the time we get to the end of chapter 21, would like nothing more than to go stand on the hilltops and shout, "This Jesus of Nazareth is a fraud. Look out for him. He's trying to wreck this religion that was handed down to you by our fathers and that we are the caretakers and stewards of. This guy is the problem. And Jesus isn't really going out and running a campaign to win votes. He knows what is coming next for him. And whether you're super familiar with the Bible or not, I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying what comes next for him is he gets executed by being nailed to a cross and jabbed in the side, pokey thing. And it's ugly, it's violent, and it's horrible. So he knows exactly what he's signing up for. What he's doing is just spitting truth left and right. And in chapter 21, the thing that he said, the truth that he put forward that has us at this point of great conflict is that the religious leaders are once again fired. They're done. They're being replaced. And there is some kind of new stewardship. There is some kind of new family of faith. And the king is returning. The king is indeed here. And all the paradigms are going to get mixed up. All of this, my friends, brings us to a big question we got to tackle over the next few days. And that is, well, what happens to Israel then? Like if Jesus is building a new family of faith and everybody's invited, but you still got all of these promises and this relationship between God and his chosen people, the Jews in the Old Testament. Well, where do they go? How does that all work out? And we're going to be looking closely at a few of these passages here over the next few days and trying to figure out some sense of what the answer is to that question. So we got people in the room who've been here for the last couple of years. We got people in the room who are relatively new or even brand new to this conversation. Hopefully, this little reset today puts all of us on the same page and sets us up to be ready to consider a tricky little part of the New Testament here and some big questions that smart, quality, reasonable Christians have debated for a very long time. We'll see if we can get to the bottom of it here over the next couple of days. And if not to the bottom of it, we'll see if we can at least get to a place where we understand why good people would think different things as it pertains to some of these questions. And Matt, this is the 10 Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.